Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to stand before you tonight to speak about something that does not make headlines, does not trend on social media, and rarely becomes the subject of public conversation, yet quietly determines the direction of our lives. We live in an era of unprecedented opportunity. In the United States, we grow up surrounded by stories of ambition and achievement. We are told that anything is possible. We are raised on narratives of bold pioneers, courageous entrepreneurs, transformative leaders, and innovators who changed the world. From the earliest days of this nation's founding, Americans have admired bravery, the kind that crosses oceans, builds industries, challenges injustice, and breaks barriers. We celebrate those who stand tall in the face of adversity. We tell stories of resilience and grit. We applaud bold decisions. But tonight, I want to focus on something deeper. Before any external victory, there is always an internal decision. Before someone launches the business, before someone writes the book, before someone steps onto the stage, before someone speaks the truth, there is a quiet moment. A moment where doubt whispers. A moment where fear tightens its grip. A moment where comfort offers safety. A moment where resistance says, stay where you are. That moment is rarely seen. It is never televised. It is deeply personal. And yet, it is in that moment that destinies shift. We often talk about competition as something external, between companies, between nations, between teams. But the most decisive competition you will ever face is not with someone else. It is with the version of yourself that wants to remain small. It is the tug of war between security and expansion, between familiarity and possibility, between who you have been and who you could become. In a culture that encourages comparison, achievement, and constant forward motion, we sometimes overlook the fact that the greatest barrier to progress is not outside of us. It is within us. Inner resistance is universal. It affects the student who delays applying for a dream school, the executive who hesitates before making a bold decision, the artist who hides their work, the parent who doubts their capability, the leader who questions their voice. It does not discriminate based on talent, intelligence, or background. And the tragedy is not that resistance exists, it always will. The tragedy is when it wins. Tonight, this conversation is not about eliminating fear. It is not about pretending that doubt disappears. It is not about becoming fearless. It is about understanding resistance so clearly that it no longer controls you. It is about recognizing that discomfort is not a signal to retreat, but often an invitation to rise. It is about learning how to stand firm in the face of internal hesitation and move forward anyway. Because your future will not be determined by your potential alone. It will be determined by your willingness to act in the presence of resistance. So tonight, I invite you to lean in, to reflect honestly, to identify the places in your life where hesitation has slowed you, to acknowledge the quiet negotiations you've had with fear, and more importantly, to decide that those negotiations end now. Let us explore what inner resistance truly is, why it exists, how it disguises itself, and how you can overcome it. Not once, but consistently, because the most powerful victories are not loud. They are internal. And when you win there, everything else begins to change. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a battle. Not the kind fought on foreign soil. Not the kind broadcast on the evening news. Not the kind waged between political parties or competing corporations. I want to talk about the quiet battle, the invisible one, the one that takes place in the privacy of your own mind. It is the battle between who you are and who you could become. It is the resistance you feel when you are about to step outside your comfort zone. The hesitation before you speak up, the procrastination before you begin, the doubt that whispers, "You're not ready." The fear that murmurs, "Who do you think you are?" That force has a name, inner resistance. And if you are human, you have felt it. America's outer strength, inner struggle. In the United States, we celebrate external achievement. We admire entrepreneurs. We applaud athletes. We elevate innovators. We praise risk takers. We tell stories about boldness. But what we rarely talk about is the internal war that precedes every bold action. When Muhammad Ali stepped into the ring, the fight didn't begin with the bell. It began long before, in doubt, discipline, and self-mastery. When Oprah Winfrey built her empire, her greatest opponent wasn't the market. It was the voice telling her she didn't belong. When Elon Musk risked everything on innovation, the fiercest threat wasn't public criticism. It was internal uncertainty. The American story often highlights courage, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement despite fear. And resistance is the birthplace of courage. What is inner resistance? Inner resistance is the force that pushes back when growth calls forward. It shows up as procrastination, self-doubt, perfectionism, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of success. Yes, even fear of success. Because success demands visibility, responsibility, change. Resistance prefers comfort. It prefers the familiar. It prefers safety. It prefers the identity you already know, even if it limits you. Resistance says, stay where you are. Don't risk embarrassment. Play it safe. Wait until you're ready. But here's the truth. You will never feel fully ready. The psychology of resistance. Resistance exists for a reason. Your brain is wired for survival, not expansion. Thousands of years ago, safety meant staying within the tribe, avoiding danger, not standing out. Today, standing out may mean speaking up in a meeting, starting a business, publishing your work, changing careers, leaving a relationship, setting a boundary. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a lion and public criticism. So it reacts. Heart races, hands sweat, mind doubts, and resistance wins when you interpret discomfort as danger. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. The cost of giving. In what happens when we listen to resistance, dreams are delayed, talents remain hidden, ideas die in notebooks, conversations never happen, opportunities pass quietly by, regret grows. And regret is far heavier than fear. In America, we admire ambition, but too often we abandon it at the first sign of discomfort. The tragedy is not failure. The tragedy is never trying. The myth of motivation. Many people wait for motivation. They say, I'll start when I feel inspired. I'll act when I'm confident. I'll move when fear disappears. But action precedes confidence. Movement generates clarity. Discipline defeats resistance, not motivation. When Kobe Bryant trained before sunrise, he didn't wait to feel like it. He moved anyway. When J.K. Rowling wrote despite rejection, she didn't wait for approval. She persisted. Resistance fades when confronted consistently. How resistance disguises itself. Resistance is clever. It doesn't always say don't do it. Sometimes it says do it tomorrow. Research a little more. Perfect it first, maybe later. It masquerades as productivity, as caution, as realism. But deep down, you know the difference between preparation and avoidance. One moves you forward, the other keeps you safe. Reframing fear. What if fear isn't a stop sign? What if it's a compass? What if the very thing you're avoiding is pointing toward your next level? The speech you're afraid to give, the business you're afraid to start, the truth you're afraid to say, the boundary you're afraid to set. Fear often guards the doorway to expansion. When you feel resistance, ask, what is this protecting me from? And what is it preventing me from becoming? The identity shift. Overcoming resistance is not about eliminating fear. It's about shifting identity. Instead of asking, how do I feel? Ask, who do I choose to be? The disciplined one, the courageous one, the resilient one, the one who tries. When identity changes, behavior follows. You stop negotiating with resistance. You expect it. You prepare for it. You act anyway. Practical strategies to defeat inner resistance. 1. Shrink the action. Make it smaller. Write one sentence. Make one call. Take one step. 2. Set a timer. Commit to 5 focused minutes. Momentum builds naturally. 3. Separate feelings from action. You can feel fear and act. They are not mutually exclusive. 4. Visualize regret. Imagine not trying. Imagine the missed opportunity. Feel that weight. 5. Build evidence. Keep track of small wins. Confidence grows from proof, not hope. The power of repetition. Courage is not a personality trait. It is a practice. Every time you override resistance, you rewire your brain. Every time you act despite fear, you weaken its hold. Over time, what once terrified you becomes normal. Growth becomes familiar, and resistance loses its authority. Resilience in an uncertain world. We live in volatile times. Economic shifts, technological disruption, cultural tension. The world will always present external obstacles, but the most decisive battles are internal. If you conquer yourself, you cannot be defeated by hesitation. Resilience begins within. The freedom beyond resistance. On the other side of resistance lies confidence, expansion, leadership, creativity, authenticity. But most importantly, freedom. Freedom from self-imposed limits. Freedom from hesitation. Freedom from the prison of what if. And here is the paradox. Resistance never fully disappears. It evolves as you grow. But so does your strength. A call to action tonight, I challenge you. Think of the one thing you've been postponing. The dream, the decision, the conversation, the step. You already know what it is. That subtle tension in your chest? That's it. Don't wait for courage. Create it. Act before you feel ready. Move before certainty arrives. Speak before confidence peaks. Because growth does not require perfection. It requires motion. Closing. The quiet victory. There may be no applause, no headlines, no immediate reward, but every time you overcome inner resistance, you win a silent victory. You become stronger, more disciplined, more aligned, and one day, when someone calls you brave or accomplished or successful, they will see the result. But you will remember the real battle. The mornings you showed up anyway, the fear you walked through, the doubt you silenced, the resistance you refused to obey, and that invisible war you fought and won will be your greatest achievement. So step forward, not because it's easy, not because you're fearless, but because you refuse to let resistance write your story. The battle is internal, the victory is personal, and the time is now. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with something that goes beyond motivation. Motivation fades, emotion fluctuates, energy rises and falls, but identity endures. The real question is not whether resistance will appear in your life again. It will. The real question is, who will you be when it does? Will you be the person who negotiates with fear, who delays one more day, who waits for certainty, who seeks comfort? Or will you be the person who moves anyway? Because the world does not only reward talent, it rewards action. It does not only celebrate intelligence, it celebrates persistence. It does not elevate the fearless, it elevates the courageous. And courage is not a personality trait, it is a decision repeated daily. In this country, we admire strength, but true strength is invisible. It is waking up early when excuses feel easier. It is making the call you've been avoiding. It is submitting the proposal despite doubt. It is starting before you feel ready. It is continuing after you feel discouraged. Those moments may never trend. They may never go viral. No one may clap, but they compound. And over time, they build something extraordinary, self-trust. When you repeatedly override resistance, you send yourself a powerful message. I keep my promises. I act despite fear. I move forward. And that self-trust becomes your foundation. Life will test you. Markets will fluctuate. Opinions will shift. Circumstances will change. But when you know that you can rely on yourself to act in the face of discomfort, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing scares you, but because fear no longer decides for you. One day, you will look back at your life, and you will not measure it only by the awards you received or the titles you held. You will measure it by the moments you chose courage over comfort, by the risks you took, by the truths you spoke, by the dreams you pursued, by the resistance you refused to obey. That is where fulfillment lives, not in ease, not in avoidance, not in safety, but in growth. So as you leave tonight, I ask you to carry one thought with you. Resistance is not your enemy. It is your signal. It appears when you are near expansion. It surfaces when you are close to growth. It intensifies when you are on the edge of transformation. Do not interpret it as a warning to retreat. Interpret it as proof that you are standing at the threshold of something greater. And step forward. Step forward imperfectly. Step forward uncertain. Step forward afraid. But step forward. Because your potential deserves action. Your dreams deserve movement. Your future deserves courage. The battle is internal. The victory is yours to claim. And the moment to begin is always now. Thank you.